Hi, my dear friends. In this series of episodes called Connect, I am trying to give some important ideas on public speaking. If you have not subscribed to this channel, please do. People in my program ask me, I can speak well, I carry on with people, every day we are conversing. So what is the big difference between a conversation and public speaking? So I wrote it in my book in chapter 11. Public speaking is different, conversation is different. The very term public means you are conveying some important message in order to convince the people in front. But then you may ask me, even in a conversation, that is what is happening, isn't it? True. But a conversation is done in a very friendly, informal setup. In front of you, there could be one or two people. You may decide to participate or not to participate. The person in front of you may put forth a point. You may decide to meet that point or not to meet that point. Somebody with whom you are in conversation may not agree with you. You may decide to convince him or not to convince him. But what happens in a public platform? Let's say that you are a political leader. You have to carry the people with you. The opposition is making certain promises. You have to make certain promises to get people's support. Or you are in a debating society. The topic for discussion is for or against. In a public speaking, you will have to give stories, anecdotes to convince people. There are things like gestures, facial expression, use of metaphor, simile. All those things are very relevant in a public speaking. In fact, people are not afraid of conversation, but the same person who makes out a point very well in a private conversation, if we give a mic in his hand, he will not say even 10% of what he said. So public speaking is completely different from conversation. In fact, in this chapter, I have given a beautiful quotation by Rudyard Kipling. Words are, of course, the most powerful drug used by mankind. Your words, your choice of words, your choice of metaphor, your choice of simile, your choice of quotations make a very big difference in a public speaking context. I have been giving some important examples of speeches from history. I gave the example of Martin Luther King, I Have a Dream speech. In this episode, I'm going to give a speech which is very good, very impressive. John F. Kennedy. You all know that John F. Kennedy was the youngest president of the United States. He became such a popular person, like for example, how Dr. Abdul Kalam became in the minds of youngsters. The issue in front of a nation was, should America take the moon landing project or not? See, in a major project like this, a president of a country should carry the people with him. They may ask, why is it required? What is it going to do for the country? Can we afford it? See, even today, in our own country, when a huge Statue of Liberty was made for Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel. A lot of discussions were going on. So as a head of a country, you have to carry the people with you. And those days, the media was not that powerful. So John F. Kennedy decided to address a crowd of 40,000 people. He had to muster the support of the American people. After all, this was the most expansive civil technological program in the history of the United States. On 12th September 1962, he delivered his famous speech, "We chose to land on the moon," like "I Have a Dream" speech of Dr. Martin Luther King, in front of an audience of 40,000 people at Rice Universities in Texas. I will read an excerpt from the speech. But why? Some say, the moon. Why choose as our goal? And they may as well ask, why climb the highest mountain? Why 35 years ago fly Atlantic? We chose to land on the moon in this decade, not because that will be easy, but because it will be hard, because that goal will serve to organize and measure the best of our energies and skills. Because that challenge is one we are willing to accept, one we are unwilling to postpone, and one we intend to win. This was the speech. In fact, I display this as a part of a visual for this episode. And at the end of the speech, Kennedy returned to one of the questions posed earlier with a short anecdote from the history to inspire the crowd and frame the quest for the moon as an imperative. See, he has to make the people to align with him. Huge money was involved. Opposition may take it as an opportunity to beat him. He gives an anecdote in his own words as he delivered that day. Many years ago, the great British explorer George Mallory, who was to die on Mount Everest, was asked why did he climb the Mount Everest. He said, because it is there. And Kennedy said, because the moon was there and it was a challenge, America was ready to accept and ready to win. Just imagine the president of a country making such a bold, empowering speech. The purpose of public speaking is to empower people, is to align people. Especially you need public speaking at a time when there is a conflict of views. Like what's happening today, just imagine today as I'm delivering this episode, there's a big controversy going on about COVID injections. Should people go for the COVID injection or not? The government has its own plan. The opposition has its own plan. In fact, in a democracy, the ruling party has its policies and they should have its own strategy to implement. The opposition party also has its policy and it has to counter the ruling party. And as Rudyard Kipling said, words are of course the most powerful drug used by mankind. You have to make people swing. So in a public speaking calls for a decorative aspects such as the use of idioms and phrases. stories, metaphors, anecdotes, experiences. In a casual conversation, you don't need all this. In a casual conversation, you may decide to ignore some of the points. In fact, in a casual conversation, you may give up. But what happens in a public speaking? What happens when the head of a state wants to implement a particular policy against the strongest opposition? You take, for example, in the parliament, what happens when a bill is moved? Look at the opposition. For example, in India, the triple talaq bill was introduced and passed. The GST bill was moved and passed by the finance ministry. I am sure you would have gone through the controversies, the opposition. Similarly, the abolition of the special status given under Article 370 and 35A of the Indian Constitution to Jammu and Kashmir. Look at the parliamentary debates. Way back in the Constitution Assembly, when the founders of the Indian Constitution gave a structure how much debate should have taken place. That is why even politics, even more than in any other field, you need to be a good public speaker. The same applies to our day-to-day life. You may not be a member of parliament, you may not be a member of assembly, but still you have to convince. As I said, even in a private conversation, certain aspects of public speaking will be useful to you to convince the person in front of you. So, the exercise for you for this episode, go through John F. Kennedy's speech. You can easily download it from the website, memorize it. Imagine you are John F. Kennedy, convincing 40,000 people in front and deliver the speech. If you have a mobile camera, video camera, record it and see what happens. This speech is also available, Kennedy's speech is also available, the original speech is available on the net. Compare how he delivered and how you are delivering. See you in the next episode.